Greetings and salutations. Namaste. Thank you for joining me. I humbly invite you to participate in this brief meditation.
Indigenous soul, original whole, seeing with sacred eyes, life's interconnection, speaking as blessing, divinity realized. In a sacred way, creative as play, offering our self-expressions, as gifts freely given, joyously living, abundance the lesson. A new way to listen, oneness the mission, listening to creation. Animals, stones, trees, rivers, and bones, honoring all our relations. Releasing the lies of shallow eyes, beholding each other's beauty. Freed from the chatter, speaking what matters, heart, soul, community. No more separation, now co-creation, relating essence to essence. Original blessing, joy, peace, and sharing. A new earth, expressing love's presence. Song from the Sacred White Buffalo, Lightning. Downloaded by Victoria Hanshin on November 19th, 2010.
Welcome to the make-up episode of the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo's Tarot Journal Cartomancy Radio Reading Hour. I am your humble and sometimes discombobulated host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. This is my medium-sized, I guess to some it would be large, medium-sized Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And if you listen to the episodes I put up yesterday, my deepest and sincerest apologies to you. I was not in my best form. But I don't know, maybe there's something salvageable there. What I intend to do, programming note, for those of you following along, what I intend to do is, in the coming days and probably weeks, as I push myself to really find out if the other thing I've been telling you about in these program notes, the multiplex idea, if that's going to be viable and doable on a week-to-week basis. I will also add to the list completely recreating or, creating a different experience that is what I meant to create or present. For those of you confused, not sure what's going on, for all of 2020, I sat here in my office and tried to write short stories and work on my novels that I tease, that are, some sample of which are over on Wattpad. And I stared lovingly and somewhat overwhelmedly at the tarot portion of the layout and wondered when I should actually follow my friend's sage advice and reactivate the Tarot Journal project and start working with these decks as a curious student with a little bit of jaded cynicism, but also a willingness to find out what's going on here and a working theory, and get going with it, right? Start running with it. And what happened to me last year was that I failed to step up to the table, as it were, step up to the bar, step up to the challenge, and just start grabbing a deck once a day and doing something with it. That's all it really has to be about until it takes its shape and form, right? Anyways, thank you for joining me. I am now going to do what I set out to do yesterday and fumbled severely in doing, which is use only the Major Arcana cards from my Rider-Waite-Smith deck to to ask this deck for guidance in terms of what themes or symbols or messages this deck can convey for humanity, the entire species, in terms of these archetypes, the major arcana, on a month-to-month basis for the year 2021. So, like, what heads up? What messages does this deck in particular want to give through and in collaboration with me to the human species? And I mean that sincerely, and I hope that it works. And I've gone through the cards that I've been shuffling since the meditation began, previously to initiating this show, and I'm fairly certain that they are indeed only the major arcana, not including any wild random suit cards or royalty court cards. I probably screwed up whatever magical ratio of inverted cards there may or may not have been. But I find that tends to work itself out anyways. You don't have to try too hard to allow for inverted or upside down cards if you welcome them and you make a choice about how to read them. I rambled about that yesterday. I think what I might do, for those of you curious, for my own satisfaction of saying it out loud, I think what I might do is sit down with that content and like trim out the parts where I'm just rambling and I'm distracted and not doing what I want to do, and acknowledge the happy accident and exit it, and then just present this following reading. What I'm about to do now, dear friends and listeners, is lay out 12 cards, 3 in each corner of the square reading mat that I have on my table. 3 cards, 1 card for each month, so 3 months in a row. And we're going to talk in depth a little bit about the first quarter, but I'm going to reveal the whole year's thing of cards. And also 1 for the year in total, which is the last one that I'll cast. And then I'll come back and we'll discuss each card each month in depth, both in the coming days and also in the first week of each month. We'll revisit. I'll come back. I'll repost the pictures of this original layout, and we'll discuss and maybe do a follow-up reading. Because I think what I want to do is sort of visit this particular question, like what message does this deck have for humanity as an entire species collective, as a whole? And so I'm going to leave this deck to work, I'm going to isolate this deck in terms of what kinds of questions I ask it to only work with this deck for those questions. I have plenty of other decks, and plenty of other Rider-Waite-Smith equivalent decks for asking other questions, either at a personal or, for a theoretical level for theoretical clients, as it were. All right. I am going to do one last... I've just been, for those of you trying to visualize what I've been doing, as I was talking and rambling into this introduction, I had been side shuffling, or gentle shuffling, as I like to call it, just the Major Arcana card. Technical note: it is rare, I have found, to find a tarot enthusiast that is comfortable with the idea of casino shuffling their beloved decks. So if you are a relatively new person of curiosity and or interest, and you're getting a reading done from a friend, or you're paying, and they, either way, however you come about it, if you ever encounter the moment, pro tip, if a reader ever hands you their deck and asks you to hold it or touch it for the energy's sake, and then maybe invites you to shuffle it, Don't just presume that a healthy, fat, thick, really noisy casino shuffle is what they're inviting you to do. They're probably, unless their deck looks really sort of like home gambly worn, like people who play a lot of different kinds of card games and people who are poker enthusiasts and whatnot, you can find that their playing cards reach a certain level of softness from being worn. So unless a person's tarot deck is like that, very, 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 very unlikely that they are asking you to casino shuffle. From the best of my understanding, now some may say I'm wrong, to the best of my understanding, most folks don't appreciate the casino shuffle when it comes to tarot or oracle system type cards. So that was the first thing I was doing. The second thing I'm doing, what I'm doing now, is I took the Major Arcana pile that I had been side shuffling or gentle shuffling, and then I dealt it out into a pile of 3. And then, as I was continuing to over-explain things, I took that pile of 3, I took each of the individual piles from that pile of 3 and dealt it back out in another, like, boom, boom, 1, 2, 3, there's a pile, there's a pile, there's a pile. And I'm doing it again. Taking the second pile from that previous shuffle, dealing it 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. This isn't anything that I learned. This isn't some specific thing, some special magical. This is just something that I've always, for some reason or another, have done with my cards. And then I shuffle them back into one by taking one of the 3 piles and dealing it 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 into the opposing the remaining those 3 piles. Now I'm going to do 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 with these final 2 stacks as a sort of like. Some people will be like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's very randomization. Some people might be suspicious, be like, that's how those tricky math card games, magic tricks work. You know what? You're right. But then what I do is I take, in an awkward maneuver that I haven't figured out a better way to do, I leave 2 piles. I just did that twice, right? 1, 2, 1, 2. So I have 2 piles of cards. And I'm using both hands, picking up one card and another card, and like as if I were to casino shuffle those 2 things perfectly in a 1-to-1 distribution, which I'm not doing. I'm picking them up, putting them down, one at a time, in the simplest way I know how. It's comfortable, although kind of exhausting. And there's always a kind of odd number of cards left, one at the bottom there. Boom. So all the major arcana are now back in one pile. I'm going to split that pile kind of roughly down the middle. And from that, I just stacked it back together. From that, I'm going to do one last random side shuffle in 3 things. Boom. Now I'm satisfied. It's shuffled. I'm a weirdo. There it is. Here we go. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, and a card in the center for the year. Boom. I'm now going to set aside the rest of the major arcana. Oh, and I wanted to put on some music. Let's see. I failed at this too really horribly yesterday. Glimpse of Eternity by May Dan. As I just found them on freemusicarchive.org. The reason it's not indexed, if you're looking at the Sprecher page, or on the RSS feed on any other platform that would convey the metadata correctly, the reason there isn't a little bookmarky thing or a blurb or a tag or a song title showing up on your screen is probably because I'm playing it on my desktop through a big fancy speaker so that I can hear it. while we work. It was supposed to be on while I shuffled, and I totally didn't have it. But oh well. Let's take a look. Here we are. Thank you for tuning in. What is tarot? I've rambled about it disjointedly at various times in my podcasting project, and I think I've pulled most of those episodes. So if you've heard them before, you know that I have interesting opinions. And if you've never heard before, you may have your own opinions, and that's great. And we're here to consider how to create a theory that includes and has room for everybody's opinions about tarot. To put it succinctly, though, for those listening to this episode here and now, in the present moment, I understand any oracle deck, quote-unquote, bunny ears with my fingers, as a work of art that is meant to be akin to a Rorschach blot deck, if you imagine. In fact, I'm sure there's probably one out there. A Rorschach blot divination deck is probably in existence. Or if not divination, maybe just, psychological Rorschach block reading test deck. Thinkers, philosophers, and I would guess some of these people probably consider themselves magicians, have collaborated to create a system of symbolic imagery which I believe evokes and triggers deep, intuitive, metaphysical understandings because they drew from that place. There's a common place that we can access vis-a-vis our metaphysical, spiritual, emotional, intellectual soul network, I propose. And these things, these works of art, these little tiny paintings, theoretically, arguably, were designed having tapped into that space, that spiritual gestalt, that there's so many names that sort of point to the similar liminal space that humanity has shared access to. And I often sort of suck at remembering them, but they're there and they're common and they're part of the pop cultural history of general sort of, non-normative thinking. So I have found, at least, that is how I engage with these things we call oracle decks. And that for me, I find a sort of weaving together of meaningfulness based on how I respond to the combination of the images, combining with each other, and the words as compiled and or composed by people defining what the images mean. And that a vortex in my imagination, if I may make an analogy, comes into existence, and there, for me, I find meaningful, insightful bundles of word and image. And that in thinking about those things and maybe having conversations with people about those things, my own understanding about the world may feel more connected to my deeper instincts and my deeper self and my spiritual self, etc., etc., etc. And obviously, there's a whole market, right? Like, part of the reason why I've been staring at this potential content in the face and sort of been intimidated to do it is I want to enter that market, but I also feel, I don't know, like a weirdo, like I'll be an outlier in that market, and that I may be accused, not so inaccurately, by those already well established in the market, that I am unauthoritative, that I'm not properly trained or properly experienced. But I digress. I have my purposes for being here and for doing so, and I progress anyways. Let's see what the cards have to say to all of us, to any of us. This other track, by the way, is from the same artist, and it's called Contemplating the Stars. How appropriate. January's card is the Star. And I love it, and I think intuitively I find it kind of delightful and fitting. I'm just going to tear through the whole year. February, the Devil. Don't stress. If you don't know anything about Tarot, the Devil is not Satan. February is Judgment. March, very curiously, remains the Queen of Pentacles. That's a thing that happens, by the way, like a consistency in the cards. April is Strength. I like that. That, without even looking up the definition, I feel confident in saying is an auspicious sign on a good month. May, the Fool upright. June, the Empress upright. Whereas in the I'm just going to leave the episodes where they are, I think. There's too many interesting, weird... She was upside down here in the sort of messed up, screwed up, mistaken, riddled reading that I then realized or chose would be more of a personal reading than a species-wide interpersonal reading. The Hierophant. In August. Right, did I get the name right? January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. Justice. I like that. Not sure why. We'll find out why. October. You're not going to believe it. I need to... Oh my God, that's a trip. Statistically speaking, I don't know what the odds are, but I would imagine them to be slim. Death in October, probably just for the shits and giggles of the fact that I kind of asked for it. It was like, because yesterday, as you may recall, in the prior reading, which I'll stop trying to judgment bash, death was in November. And I said, wouldn't it be cute if death had been in October, just for funs and giggles? But it also makes sense. And also, given meanings and stuff, even from my sort of novice understanding, this is a lovely thing. It's great, I think. Tell me if I'm wrong. But November is now the Magician. And that I find just intuitively sort of satisfying as the card that follows death in any layout, no matter, what the orientation and the question is. Because if it's following death, it means there was deep change, you accepted your limitations, i.e. your mortality, and then you became the Magician, especially if we're talking about archetypes and things that humanity can aspire to achieve and activate for themselves collectively. Which, of course, is by striving them personally. The High Priestess is December. And for appropriate recognition, the same artist, Mei Dan, I don't know how you pronounce an A with an umlaut, and I also don't know how to pronounce that name, but the two dots, so forgive me. But MEYDA, two dots over the A, N, is an artist available on freemusicarchive.com, and this track is called Freezing But Warm. Much gratitude to that artist for allowing me to play their songs, and I will probably add a couple of other songs from this and or similar artists to this playlist, and it'll become my general sort of like reading playlist, because I need nice, chill, meditative music for reasons I already rambled about. Okay, let's see what the year card is. The Hermit, which also appeared in yesterday's reading. Curiouser and curiouser. How interesting. So, to review, I dealt 12 major arcana cards, one for each month, as a symbol for what this deck wants to give a message to humanity, which it could be a message to like focus on these energies or avoid these pitfalls, etc. You know how that goes. So what we'll do is we'll visit each month and we'll discuss now in the coming days, because I think I'll do 3 months at a time. I don't want to do all 12 months in this episode. It'll tear the shit out of my voice. Because honestly, if you're really nerdy like me, there's a lot of interesting content associated with each card and its meaning. So for now, we're gonna keep each episode light and punchy. That's the new motto for 2020. All the episodes, all the segments, lighter, punchier, and sort of faster paced. Thank you to the more than one recent social media acquaintance has made that suggestion, and thank you to everybody who's made those and other recommendations about how to run the show, as well as thank you to everybody who supports the show. So to review and cap things off really quick, for January, the Star. February, the Devil. March, Judgment. January, February, March. April, Queen of Pentacles. May, Strength. April, May, June. The Fool is June. July, the Empress. August, the Hierophant. September, Justice. October, Death. November, the Magician. And December, the High Priestess. And yeah, you know what? Some months I kind of get them at a little wonky. And to sort of kick off the process but end this episode on a good note, on a strong note, we're going to do an interesting dive into the Star as soon as I find it. I have, in my preparations for this project, and in my own sort of curiosity and fascination with, I'm going to leave that there, with tarot in general, I have acquired for myself an interesting collection of books. Today, for the kickoff reboot, take 2, I'm probably going to stick mostly to Jana Riley's Tarot Dictionary and Compendium. Although I had also pulled, if I read it, I don't remember if I read it all yesterday from this or not, but I pulled these 2 books yesterday. The second book being 78 Degrees of Wisdom, a book of tarot by Rachel Pollack, revised with a new preface. 2 of my, and I love every single one of these books. They're interestingly well written, they're insightful, and they're satisfactory in that they answer in their own way and in their own sort of perspective many of the wide-ranging questions that I myself have and have had over the years about this curious, enduring, and many swear up and down, really helpful little artsy toolkit. It's a fun way to think about it, of self-help, of self-contemplation and exploration of one's own thoughts and feelings about one's own life and life circumstances. from Tarot Dictionary and Compendium, I would like to read the opening wibbly bits and some highlighted things that I've underlined from Chapter 2, The Major Arcana. The author opens this chapter with, as they open many chapters, I believe, if I can remember correctly, with quotes that they find fascinatingly apropos from wild and interesting sources. This is from I've never known how to pronounce this correctly, and every person who's ever said the word to me has pronounced it in an interesting and wildly different way. Ecclesiastes, I don't know. E-C-C, two C's, Lesiastes, which for those who've never heard that word or think they've never heard that word, is from the Bible. Ecclesiastes 2:16. I sometimes forget about this book. No judgment. Anyways, the quote from Ecclesiastes 2:16 that this delightful author, whom I really enjoy this book a lot, it's one of my favorites, Janet Riley. Bless your heart for writing this, and I don't mean that in the southern dismissive way. Thank you, and God bless you for writing this book. For anybody who appreciates tarot, this is a gem. Go get it. Go support this book. Genuine, authentic, non-rights or license infringing intended utilization of this book as an actual dictionary of tarot. Anyway, the quote. Because this is chapter 2, the Major Arcana. And she opens, the fool. How dieth the wise man as the fool? Ecclesiastes 2:16. I don't think that the first instance of the phrase the fool is from the quote. I think the Ecclesiastes quote is, how dieth the wise man as the fool? Ecclesiastes 2:16. And let it be understood that no matter what your initial opinion of tarot may or may not be, I, for one, am a person who understands and has long appreciated that, quote, the fool is a really powerful, really meaningful, really universal, approachable, human, wordless symbol from that reaches and has obviously been included in many different kinds of symbolic systems or cultural systems throughout history into ye olde ancient times. The Aboriginal people of the furthest reaches and corners of the world that have maintained their Aboriginal practices into a modern enough period that they may be studied by, have been studied by, quote unquote, approaching modernity by the sciences. They all honored in some way or form the fool, using terminology that really relates. And there's some fascinating thing there. Why is that? And why is the fool a card in the Major Arcana? My response to that is, after my own deep thinking and exploration, is that arguably these images, and not even necessarily according to Raider Wyatt Smith, but according to some long ago potentially forgotten and or vilified, marginalized, dismissed tradition, is part of a larger set of symbolic language tools and resonate. They resonate deeply, right? Justice. Some of them have archaic language and maybe don't have as much immediate resonance on the surface, but once you dig deeper into their meaning, like I'm thinking like the Hierophant, right? Just looking around at the Hermit, like why is the Hermit 2021? That sounds like it should have been 2020's year a card, but it's 2021's year card because I just did this reading correct. But I may now, given that there's just enough curious synergies in the layout, in the spread, as it's called, in the reading. I may just keep them all as is and run with it. But they are all my episodes in theory, and there's a buttload amount of content now for anybody new joining the show and thinking, I'm going to listen to it all from beginning to end. There's too much. I mean, unless you're a really, really, really unfortunate soul with way too much money on your hands. Not money. Way too much time on your hands. By all means. If you got too much money on your hands, donations are welcome to help sustain and produce the show. I'm going like public radio style on Sprecher. I don't know if that's allowed. I don't think that's allowed. I'm technically not allowed, I don't think, to do fundraisers on Sprecher. I am allowed to do fundraisers on Facebook. I may technically not be allowed to teaser them on Sprecher. Okay, I stopped with that. Back to the actual reading. Sorry for being weird for a second there. I got a little silly. From the dictionary and compendium. Quote, the major arcana consists of 22 cards representing the major archetypes. Period. Full stop. That sentence can be unpacked quite a few different ways. But let's see what the author goes on to say. 22 is probably not anymore a definitive number of archetypes than any other number, as an ancient cultures and religions, along with more modern, tend to encompass literally hundreds of archetypes, as does Hinduism with its voluminous legion of greater and lesser gods, and Catholicism with its celestial hierarchy of many hundreds of seraphim, cherubim, thrones, dominions, virtues, powers, principles, archangels, and angels. However, in tarot, the major arcana are assumed to be those archetypes most eminently connected with the collective unconscious of humanity. We could stop right there, couldn't we? But I shall continue really quickly for a brief moment. And as such, I continue reading, have universal application regardless of one's race, religion, or creed. So, boom. Interesting thing. They go on to speculate in a sort of yin-yang Zen style that the major arcana can be said, quote, to consist of only two archetypes. These two archetypes being the, quote, earth-heaven polarity of yin-yang, positive and negative, or male and female, being expressed in 22 of their complementary aspects or stages. And it is true, the vast majority of the major arcana depict either male or females as sort of... Oh wait, I screwed up! It's only just hitting me now, what a redonkulous person I am. The Queen of Pentacles is giggling and laughing her ass off as she sits in the same spot that she was in yesterday's messed up, quote-unquote, I say that with some self-mockery, reading, and she is not a member of the major arcana. But apparently she has much love for me and or for humanity. I don't know what to do about that, friends and audience fam, because I really wanted today's reading. Let's leave her there and leave the situation. I don't know. Hold on a second. I'm asking for a brief moment's intuitive guide. Okay, fine. I just pulled the next major arcana card, and it is the Hanged Man. We'll put him there in place. But bless you, Queen of Pentacles. You belong over here. Where are you? With all of your royal cards. I want to do a special reading with just the royal cards, by the way, which is one of the reasons why I've separated this deck out intentionally and will probably keep it separated out. I don't know how controversial that maneuver was, but I just asked my inner voices that I recognize are not my ego mind, and that they might have some, guidance from the spirit realm, as it were. And I said, what's a better choice? Put the Hermit in her place, because he had been up here somewhere before, or pull the next card and put it in her place. And my hand went to the next card, and not the Hermit. The Hermit stays. We'll find out. We'll do a reading. Also, by the way, I intend to do a weird thing with this, friends. If this keeps going and I don't start hating myself, and or I don't get lots of hate mail from serious tarot readers telling me to shut the fuck up and stop doing it on my podcast, I intend to keep the imagery, take a photograph. I'm going to take, obviously we'll post it as well, as a baseline reading, but quarterly I'm going to take new readings. I'm going to obviously the previous quarter that is over will remain, but at the end of March, and or maybe the first day of April, which is now the Hanged Man, with a reference to the Queen of Pentacles, right? Because she came up twice, and I'll always probably bounce back and forth between those. I'll redo. And I'm working out the details. Will I lay out 3 cards as a sort of hindsight? How did those months turn out? Sort of inclusion, keep those cards counted and dealt. Or will I burn 3 cards as those months are closed and I don't need a reading about how they ended, because we know how they ended. And then deal the remainder of the calendar. I'm swinging back and forth 60-40, 60-40, 40-60, 40-60 on that. But we'll leave it there. Put a pin in that. Let us turn to not drag on too much longer, because we're already at 42 minutes. The reading for the star, the month of January. And then we'll come back and revisit these first 3 cards for the first quarter. So the way that this dictionary works is, this author did research, real research, and compiled notable, important authors in the realm of tarot writers, and their concordances or definitions or meanings for each card, and laid those down in a sort of concise, simplified, but still true to each author's style and word and choices kind of way. So, turning to page 67 of the dictionary, in the Major Arcana of the Tarot Dictionary and Compendium, in the Major Arcana section, we have the star. And we have a list of authors: Arian, Cowie, Crowley, Akins, Fairfield, Greer, Noble, Pollock, Shermanberg, Stewart, Waite, Walker, Wainless, Rith, and Riley. And for each author, there's a blurb. I kind of like to start with the Wyatt of Raider Wyatt Smith. And do they have Smith separately? No. Smith is the woman who painted the art of the RWS, or Raider Wyatt Smith, the most commonly recognized tarot deck. Not necessarily the most popular. There's a lot of beautiful interpretations of the Raider Wyatt Smith imagery, as it is, she didn't invent these icons. She just created these. And of course, there are other decks that predate this Raider Wyatt Smith deck, but for some reason, in contemporary times, this remains sort of like the core deck. when people are new to tarot and are interested and are curious and are wanting to, ask questions in social media groups, etc., 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 I have often seen the question, the inquiry, where do I begin? What deck do I start with? Rider-Waite-Smith is 88 to 95% of the time, it's almost, I might as well default and round up and say it's 99% of the recommendations, because it's strongly recommended. It ebbs and flows. There are several other, some of them really well known, some of them not so well known. I work with quite a few in terms of the weird, silly system that I'm developing, and we'll talk more about that in future episodes. But let's kind of look around some of these meanings to the star and see what we have to look forward to in January, according to this Rider-Waite-Smith deck, Oh Mine, that I ever so humbly asked to give us some meaningful messages for each month. I'm just going to power through some keywords and or phrases and or whole chunks of stuff. Riley, gaining an inner view, receiving and recognizing the love of your spirit for you. Passion. Passion is soul's recognition of her spirit. Soul's recognition of her spirit. Gaining an inner view. Fairfield. Experiencing the boundless, free abundance of the universe, sensing a flow of pure energy and resources that can be used for many purposes. Knowing that you have these infinite resources at your disposal, you can channel this energy whenever you want. The star is an interesting card. There is an iconic, archetypical, archon-like, feminine, disrobed, nude figure kneeling beside a small pool of water, 1 foot godlike on the water, not sinking into it, and the kneeling knee on the shore, on the ground. And she's either really big or the puddle is really small, but she's pouring out 2 vessels, one directly into the pond and another, away from the shore of it, which creates rivulets. And much has been said about it. Many interpreters of tarot go deep into the symbols inside the symbol, right? Others take the whole card as one compound symbol. And it's a fascinating thing to really dip and dive and explore different things. Where's Wyatt? Wyatt. I've never been sure how to pronounce that. Rider-Waite? Waite. The mottos of this card are waters of life freely, in quotes, and, in quotes, gifts of the spirit. It goes on to say, the great mother in the Kabbalistic Seraphim Binah, which is supernal understanding, who communicates to the Sephiroth, who are below, in the measure that they can receive her influx, hope, immortality, interior light, truth unveiled. Sherman Burke. A happy message of promise, good fortune, optimism, joy, suggests inspiration, a sense of purpose, and the renewal of life's forces and energies. Walker. The mystic's, quote, astral body, close quote, is literally the star body, based on the ancient notion that our inner being is a star. The goddess Artemis governed stars and appeared as Ursa Major and the Great Bear, or what we now call the Big Dipper, greatly venerated by the ancients because of its position at the apex of heaven and because it forever circles the North Star. And there is indeed cause to consider her Artemis, the star. There is one great golden yellow star at the center of this card, and it is surrounded by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 visible stars, and 2 implied stars potentially blocked by Artemis herself. And or not. It depends on who you ask. There's interesting debate there, I've read. From what I recall vaguely, in terms of my own sort of synthesized understanding, this star represents celestial inspiration, guidance from the stars, the divine feminine, feminine energy, feminine flow, creativity, artistic creativity, and things of that nature, things of that ilk. The giving nature of divinity, pouring out their loving waters, their nurturing fluids, to sustain the world around us, the material plane, and therefore, i.e., us, and also, provide. Waters are, of course, symbol always for the dynamic systems of the emotional mind and of consciousness and of inspiration. Let's see what other things we can draw before bringing to a close. Akins, following your own star, meditating upon the nature at the center of the true self. I like that. Natural intelligence of the universal mind, which is found at the great ocean of the dark subconsciousness. Hearing our own song through meditation and then moving with love, calm, and peaceful agility. Crowley, Aquarius, Daleth. And those are occult references, because Crowley is the most proud and preening of the occultist that dabbled in tarot and makes a big to-do about his occult roots for his own deck, which we'll talk about eventually. I do work with it. It's controversial. I have my reasons, and we'll talk about it when we get to it. But I like his words sometimes. Use all thine energy to rule thy thought. Burn up thy thought as the phoenix. Fairfield, experience. Oh, I've already read Fairfield, right? Experiencing the boundless, free abundance of the universe. Greer, principle of courage to be ourselves. Acknowledge the power from source. Self-esteem, spiritual regeneration, hope in a vision of the future. The individual freed from all masks and restrictions, being replenished by the waters of the unconscious. Interdependency of nature. Noble, opening to the goddess. The calm after the storm. Passing to a new level, trusting in the ability of the universe to heal and being ready to begin the process of transformation. Often a peaceful, restful period which connects you to others or to divine spirit in the world. Amen and hallelujah. Humanity can use a little bit of all of that this month. Wouldn't you agree? All right. We will revisit this. In terms of how I work, I like layers, layering. In fact, one of the decks out there in the world that I love to see on a bookshelf that I've yet to acquire, that I hope someday to acquire, that if any beautiful, loving, charitable patron wants to acquire on my behalf and gift to me, it would be more than welcome. I don't know why I got all weird like that and requested that, but there's a weird tradition, and I have an opinion on it about how tarot decks are supposed to be gifted and not bought for oneself. But also, I don't know how serious that is. But also, there's a bunch of other issues that we can follow down that rabbit hole of where do these traditions come from, and are we culturally reappropriating in a misappropriation kind of way, sort of, thorny issue kind of bundle of thoughts that we'll have to scrape together for an episode in the not too distant future. But meditate on the star, meditate with the star. One moment. Forgive me, friends, as this show is indeed most of the time created using the live Sprecher Studio app and not like multi-track audio editing, although I do that sometimes, and I will be doing more of that, as I've hinted. This episode, as I'm sitting here now, was live, and I had to clear my throat and cough a bit, and thus, I had to mute the mic. The reason we'll come back to this, and this is explicitly part of my process, is as some authors out there encourage and or discuss and explore, I too am convinced and feel confident that these are helpful symbols to meditate with. Not to fixate on, right? You never want to create idols, as we are reminded in many a divinely inspired book. But symbols and tools are meant to be worked with. So we'll come back and do a deep dive into the star, I'm sure, in the not too distant future. But let's take the words we just discussed and that imagery and let that sit with us and sort of do what it suggests, right? Meditate, contemplate, reach deep within to the root of our source self, so that we may commune with divinity, in this case, divine feminine, and receive those healing waters, those nourishing waters, those inspiring waters that divinity, feminine divinity in the meta archon of Artemis is pouring out onto the body collective, onto the material plane, in the way that she's symbolized here in this card. There you go. That's our homework. And I'll be back. I'm not going to do, for those curious, I'm not going to do the tarot journal daily. I'm going to do it probably like 2 or 3 times a month. The other segments of the show are going to find their rhythm, and so will this one. So I humbly thank you for your ears and your support. And if you're new to the show because you're interested in tarot, and that's why you've been drawn to this feed, this program, this content, thank you, and I hope that the rest of it is also interesting to you. If you didn't come at this show because of tarot, and now you find yourself taking a peek and or a listen, excuse me, to the tarot episodes, hello, and I hope that doesn't scare you off. And may the Venn diagram of all the different kinds of people that are drawn to this show continue to grow and merge and converge in interesting ways. Thank you for tuning in. May peace, love, and grooviness be with you. And thank you, shout out every day to Kelly Mays for her beautiful Buffalo meditation, which you too can listen to and or download and use for your own interesting projects over at freemusicarchive.org. And now let us sit and contemplate the star for a few moments of silence and listen to Away by May Dan. looking through, looking through some of the remaining concordances, I realize I really should just read all of them all of the time because they all work and they all end up having some interesting synergies. From the author Arian, the principle of self-esteem and confidence, self-sufficiency and talent recognized by others. During the next 17 weeks or 17 months, you increase and maintain your own self-esteem to such a point you may assist others with theirs. And then according to Cowie, knowledge being given out. Help by giving out love and understanding. Balance is maintained by giving out what is received in a controlled and balanced manner. Polak. Hope, a sense of healing and wholeness, especially after emotional storms. Inner calm. The unconsciousness activated in a very benign way. And wanless. Law of luminosity, seeing things as they really are. Inspiration, aspiration, upliftment, and affirmation. Recognition of the starlight within you so that you succeed and star on all levels of being. Giving of yourself with compassion in service to others so they may find their starlight. And finally, Riley. Gaining an inner view, receiving and recognizing the love of your spirit for you, being the rose and its thorns, a light enveloped by the universe, a verse held within the one song. Also passion. I already read that. Such beautiful things and such interesting things to contemplate. Friends, may peace, love, and grooviness blossom in your heart. Thank you for tuning in. And stick with me. Tell your friends more episodes will be dropping in the coming days and weeks.